So, last year, out of 32 fatalities across 21 incidents in the oil and gas industry, 26 of the people who died were contractors.
Yeah, 26. It's a huge number.
Right. And today, we're looking at this terrifying reality, honestly. The people dying in heavy industry, they aren't dying because of, like, mysterious freak acts of nature.
No, not at all.
They're dying because they are stepping into these massive, deafening facilities that they have literally never seen before.
Exactly.
So, our mission today is to unpack a highly sobering white paper and press release from EON AI Ventures. And it's titled, very bluntly, "This is Why People Die."
Yeah, that title definitely pulls you in. And the documents, they examine the root human and organizational causes of fatal accidents. They're drawing on deep incident data from the International Association of Oil and Gas Producers,
Right.
or IOGP.
Right.
But more importantly, the source material breaks down this new technological framework. It's called work intelligence.
Look intelligence, right.
Yeah, and it's specifically designed to stop these recurring tragedies by addressing the exact point where training fails, where human error basically takes over.
Because whether you work in heavy industry or maybe you manage remote teams, or you just want to understand how massive, complex systems fail and how cutting-edge tech is trying to fix them, this deep dive is going to fundamentally change how you view workplace safety.
It really is. I mean, it totally dismantles this illusion that sitting in a classroom and, looking at a textbook actually prepares a worker for the physical reality of a dangerous job.
Yeah, because when investigators look into these fatalities, they find the exact same overlapping problems just repeating themselves on a loop.
We really have to look past those surface-level incident reports, to understand the underlying human factors.
So why?
Exactly, the why. We need to understand the environment that takes a routine maintenance job and just turns it into a tragedy.
Yeah.
The EON white paper, it builds its whole foundation on a peer-reviewed analysis of 184 fatal accidents.
Wow, okay.
This is from the IOGP database from 2013 to 2017. And the data paints a very specific picture of who is most at risk. Like we said, contractors were involved in 86% of those cases.
86%. But, I mean, the statistic that fundamentally changes the narrative here, it's the physical context of those deaths.
Right.
In 90% of those fatal accidents, the contractor's work environment was judged as a, quote, present factor.
Which means?
It means the people doing the highly dangerous work had often never even seen that specific plant before they arrived to do the job.
Yeah, it's wild. Dan Lajerskar, the chairman of EON AI Ventures, he puts it perfectly in the press release.
What does he say?
Well, he says, in 184 fatal accidents, 90% of the time, the people doing the work had never seen that plant. Last year, 26 of 32 who died were contractors. That is not a course you send them on. That is a plant they have never walked.
A plant they have never walked. I mean, okay, let's unpack this. Because the enterprise, they aren't lacking safety programs, right?
Oh, not at all. These companies have safety protocols and manuals that are like thousands of pages long.
Yeah, exactly.
What's fascinating here is what they actually lack is a mechanism for contextual spatial familiarity.
Spatial familiarity.
Right, a standardized classroom module on, say, valve maintenance. It just cannot replace the physical reality of navigating a specific, unique facility that was built 40 years ago and then heavily modified since.
Because often a contractor's only preparation is looking at P&IDs, right?
Yep.
Piping and instrumentation diagrams.
Yep, P&IDs.
And I want to pause on that because P&IDs are notoriously difficult to interpret if you aren't already familiar with the plant.
Oh, absolutely.
They're essentially these massive, complex 2D schematic drawings that show all the piping, valves, and control systems of a process flow. But they are completely abstract.
They're just lines on paper, basically.
Right. They don't tell you that a specific pipe is actually located 3 decks down, behind a locked cage, in a corridor that is deafeningly loud.
And trying to translate that complex, abstract P&ID into the physical reality of a massive oil rig, I mean, that is where the gap between imagined work and actual work becomes incredibly dangerous.
Imagined versus actual work.
Right. A worker might have general competence in their trade, but zero specific, localized experience regarding the geometry of the facility. And when dealing with high-pressure systems, localized experience is literally what keeps you alive.
It's like being asked to defuse a bomb, right?
Right.
You might know how explosives work in theory, but your assignment is to defuse a live device inside a massive dark building you've never visited.
That's a great analogy.
And the only preparation you get is a generic blueprint of a completely different building. And then you are sent into the real one blind and you're just expected to navigate this maze, find the device, and cut the correct wire.
It's terrifying when you put it like that, but if that total lack of physical familiarity is the foundation for a disaster, the white paper then moves into the specific human behaviors that actually trigger the accident at the point of work.
The day of the job.
Exactly. And the source emphasizes that these are concurrent factors. It's not, a pie chart that adds up to 100%.
Like they overlap.
Right. Multiple factors are usually present simultaneously. They compound on one another to create a fatality.
So the analysis of those 184 fatalities, it breaks down into a few specific overlapping failures. First, 53% of the time, the cause involves the hand that slips.
The hand that slips, yeah.
Meaning it's the worker's very first time physically interacting with that specific piece of equipment on that specific site. And there's no expert standing next to them who has done it before to guide them.
Right. They're on their own.
Then, in 57% of cases, the failure happens within the team dynamic. It comes down to who speaks up and who is actually heard during a critical moment.
Which is huge, because teams typically only practice a job going exactly as planned.
Right, they rehearse the success.
Exactly. But communication breakdowns become fatal when a scenario deviates from the textbook. If a team has only rehearsed a maintenance procedure going perfectly, they don't have the established communication pathways to handle, sudden cascading failures.
The soft skills of crisis management just fall apart.
They completely fall apart.
But I have to challenge this next statistic, though, because it genuinely baffles me.
Oh, the skip steps.
Yeah. The report states that 50% of the time, the cause involves a skipped step.
I know, it sounds crazy.
So what does this all mean? The 50% stat on skip steps is wild to me. If you're working on a high-pressure valve on an offshore oil rig, you know a single mistake equals death.
Yeah, the stakes are as high as they get.
Why on earth would anyone just skip a safety step? Are they being actively reckless, or is there something broken in the system making them skip it? It sounds like human nature colliding with rigid bureaucracy, where everyone just accepts a dangerous shortcut as normal until someone dies.
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, it's rarely a case of active recklessness, or a worker just wanting to court danger.
Okay.
The source notes the step is skipped because in the reality of the field, quote, that is how the job gets done.
How the job gets done.
Right. This points to a deeply ingrained organizational phenomenon known as the normalization of deviance.
The normalization of deviance.
Yeah. The written procedure, the imagined work, it might dictate verifying a pressure gauge before turning a wrench. But what if that specific gauge is located half a mile away on the other side of the plant?
Right.
And retrieving the key to access it takes 2 hours.
So the worker realizes the official rule is just highly impractical given the physical layout.
Exactly. So they rely on a different indicator, or they assume it was checked by the previous shift.
And the first time they skip that step, nothing bad happens.
Nothing happens. The task is completed faster, and perhaps management even praises their efficiency,
Wow, yeah.
Over time, that deviation from the official rule becomes the new, unspoken, standard operating procedure.
Because it hasn't failed yet.
Right. The danger becomes completely invisible to the organization because the bad outcome hasn't happened yet. The written rules no longer match the physical reality of the field, which just creates this fatal blind spot.
And nobody sees the step being skipped. But the paperwork at the end of the shift probably has a signature on it claiming the step was completed.
Exactly.
Which leads perfectly into the highest concurrent factor the report identifies. In a massive 86% of the fatalities, there's a failure in planning and authorization.
86%.
Yeah, meaning the work permit didn't actually cover the exact scope of the job being done, or nobody physically verified the isolation of the dangerous energy.
And isolation of dangerous energy is a really critical concept here.
Can you explain that a bit?
Sure. It means physically ensuring that a machine cannot accidentally turn on or release hazardous energy, like high-pressure steam, electricity, or toxic gas, while someone is actively working on it. It usually involves a worker physically closing a valve, putting a physical padlock on it, and attaching a warning tag.
So when a permit says the energy is isolated, but nobody walks down to the physical valve to verify that the lock is actually there, you have a catastrophic vulnerability.
A huge one.
A contractor could open a pipe expecting it to be empty, only to be hit with high-pressure gas.
Exactly.
And the overarching theme, the report notes, across all these factors, the unfamiliarity, the skip steps, the failure to verify isolation, is the word again. The incident happened before, nothing was systematically changed, so it happened again.
And that repetition, seeing these exact same concurrent factors across 184 fatalities, that is what drives the necessity for a radically different approach to safety.
Because knowing the causes isn't enough.
Right, knowing the underlying causes is only half the battle. If the core issue is that the physical reality on the rig doesn't match the paperwork in the office, the challenge is forcing those two worlds to align before a contractor even mobilizes to the site.
So, enter work intelligence. EON AI Ventures' proposed architecture for solving this is this platform called Work Intelligence. And the source is very specific in noting that this is designed as a single comprehensive solution.
Right, it's not piecemeal.
Exactly. It's not 11 fragmented software products sold piece by piece. It's a unified system of record for how work is actually executed. And EON builds this physical familiarity starting with the plant itself, using a system called EON Universal.
Yeah, so EON Universal constructs a living digital twin of the operator's actual facility.
A digital twin.
Right. Instead of relying solely on those complex, abstract 2D PNIDs we discussed earlier, the platform synthesizes actual photographs, 3D laser scans of the facility, and the existing schematic diagrams.
To build a 3D model.
Exactly. It creates an exact navigable spatial replica of the plant. It creates the physical context that classroom training just totally lacks.
Okay, so once that digital twin exists, the platform layers on a system called Genesis. And Genesis takes the operator's written procedure manual, the dry text of the imagined work, and transforms it into an interactive simulation that a worker can actually run inside that digital twin.
And what Genesis does is it ensures the worker is following the correct sequence on the correct digital asset, and it actively scores their performance in the simulation.
Right, it grades them.
Yeah. This allows operators to fundamentally change their procurement process. They can write a requirement directly into their vendor contracts stating that any contractor crew must run this specific job on the digital twin and achieve a passing score before they are legally authorized to step foot on the physical site.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me. It's exactly like a highly realistic flight simulator, but it is custom built for one specific oil rig in the middle of the ocean.
That's a perfect way to look at it.
If a pilot makes a fatal error in a simulator, they crash the simulation, learn the lesson, and walk away. If a contractor pulls the wrong digital lever or skips a digital safety check in Genesis, they fail the module in their living room.
Right.
They don't fail in real life, where it costs them their life.
Exactly. And Mats W. Johansson, he's the president of EON AI Ventures, he captures the intent of this in the release perfectly.
What does he say?
He says, enterprises do not lack safety programs. They lack a way to put this plant, this procedure, and this last incident in front of the people who have never seen them. That is the bottom of the problem. Work intelligence is built to live there.
Built to live there.
Yeah, the genius of the architecture is the paradigm shift from passive classroom learning to active, verified competency on the exact geometry of the worksite. You force the worker to build spatial memory before they mobilize.
Okay, so getting a contractor familiar with the physical layout
Yeah.
absolutely solves the 90% factor of them never having seen the plant.
Yep.
But spatial awareness alone doesn't fix the 57% of accidents caused by team communication breakdowns, or the 50% of accidents caused by skipped steps on the day of the job.
Right, the on-the-day issues.
So how does this digital twin actually enforce soft skills and physical accountability at the exact point of work?
Well, EON specifically targets the reality of a bad day with modules called Situation Room and EON Live.
Okay.
Instead of just running the Genesis simulation where the maintenance job goes perfectly according to the manual, teams use Situation Room to step into the digital twin together and rehearse cascading failures.
Rehearsing the disaster.
Exactly. The platform introduces unexpected variables, so a sudden pressure spike, a blocked escape route, a failing valve, and the entire team has to manage the crisis collectively within the simulation.
Because if the team has only ever practiced the job going right, they freeze or panic when reality deviates.
They do, yeah.
Situation Room allows them to stress test their communication pathways and figure out who is supposed to make the final call before they are in physical danger.
Right. And to address the specific breakdown of who speaks and who is actually heard, the platform uses an analytical tool called Brainy alongside an experiential tool called EON Tacit.
I need to understand how these actually function in the field, though. Like, how does a piece of software manage the soft skill of who speaks or put an expert's judgment into a new worker's pocket?
So EON Tacit functions by capturing the nuanced experiential knowledge of veteran workers and embedding it directly into the digital workflow.
Okay, so like leaving notes.
Sort of.
Yeah.
When a new worker is standing in front of a complex valve, Tacit delivers the veteran-specific insights, so maybe video notes, spatial annotations, or even audio warnings about a particular quirk of that exact machinery.
Wow.
And it delivers it directly to the worker's mobile device or augmented reality headset.
So it directly mitigates the 53% statistic where the hand slips because it is the worker's first time and there's no expert standing next to them.
Exactly. The expert is now digitally present in their workflow.
And Brainy acts as the analytical layer on top of that.
Right. Brainy analyzes team interactions and decisions within the simulated scenarios and live workflows to identify communication gaps. It tracks the metadata of the job to ensure critical warnings aren't ignored and that the correct personnel are actually authorizing the progression of the work.
Okay, so that covers the preparation and the soft skills, but we still have the issue of physical accountability on the ground.
The skipped steps.
Right. How does the system stop a worker from physically skipping a step because, quote, that is how the job gets done, or ensure the dangerous energy was actually physically isolated?
So the platform enforces physical reality using tools called Permit IQ and Field IQ, which is also sometimes referred to as EDGE.
Field IQ or Edge, got it.
Yeah, Permit IQ transforms a static paperwork permit into a live, checkable digital contract. So instead of assuming energy isolation was verified just because a box was checked on a clipboard in an office somewhere.
The system requires physical verification,
Exactly.
meaning the worker has to actually prove they are at the specific valve. How does Field IQ do that?
It changes the interface of the work. With Field IQ, the worker's mobile device or industrial tablet acts as a gatekeeper. If Step 4 requires isolating a specific high-pressure valve on the north deck, the worker cannot simply tap complete on a screen while sitting in the break room.
Ah, okay.
The system requires spatial verification. The worker has to physically be in front of the valve. The device might require scanning a localized marker, or it uses the camera to visually identify the asset geometry, verifying they're interacting with the correct piece of machinery at the exact required time.
Wow, so the digital record captures the timestamp and location data?
Yep.
A signature is no longer accepted as proof of execution. The digital reality verifies the compliance.
Exactly.
You cannot normalize a dangerous shortcut if the system physically requires proof of the correct step to proceed.
And if they try, the deviation is instantly recorded, removing the blind spot management previously had regarding actual work versus imagined work.
Which brings us to the final piece of the platform's architecture, compound IQ and distillery. These tools are designed to attack the 86% factor, where failures in planning happen again.
The again problem.
Right, the tragic cycle of repeating past mistakes because information is siloed.
Yeah, Distillery processes the data from every completed job. It captures the deviations, the near misses, the localized workarounds, and the actual time it took to complete tasks.
Yeah, there's all the real-world data.
Right. And then Compound IQ takes that processed intelligence and makes it visible to the next crew assigned to that specific asset, even if the next crew belongs to a completely different contracting company working a year later.
That is incredible. Imagine if in your own job, every mistake, every unexpected challenge, and every clever workaround made by the person who held the job before you was perfectly documented and used to guide you in real time.
It changes everything.
It completely removes the concept of lost institutional memory. Like if a crew discovers that a specific gauge is broken and requires referencing a secondary panel, Compound IQ ensures the crew arriving 6 months later knows that before they even start planning their permit.
And this raises an important question, though, regarding accountability versus empowerment.
How so?
Well, this technology ensures that past tragedies and near misses become permanent preventative guardrails for future workers. It fundamentally alters the safety culture by forcing the rules on paper to align with the physical reality of the field.
Right.
However, it requires a complete paradigm shift where every action, every hesitation, and every deviation is permanently logged as a digital record. Work intelligence basically becomes the absolute system of record for human behavior on the site.
Wow. We started this analysis looking at a staggering reality, right? 90% of fatalities in these heavy industry accidents involve workers operating in facilities they have never seen. We looked at the concurrent, overlapping human factors driving these tragedies. The slips from lack of experience, the silenced voices in a crisis, the skip steps driven by impractical rules, and the failure to verify that dangerous energy is actually isolated.
Exact.
And then we looked at how EON's digital twin and work intelligence solutions are attempting to force workers to literally walk the plant and prove competency in a verified simulation before they ever touch physical machinery.
And look, the transition from a paper-based safety culture to a digitally verified safety culture is a moral imperative when lives are on the line. But the source material's concept of perfectly capturing how work is actually done leaves a profound implication for you to consider.
I'd love to hear it.
If AI and digital twins can perfectly record and verify every physical step and every verbal communication on an oil rig, how long until this level of granular, simulated accountability becomes the legal standard for all high-stakes jobs?
Oh.
Right. From a surgical team operating on a patient to an engineer managing a city's electrical grid. And what happens to the human element of a job when every single skipped step or minor deviation is permanently etched onto the digital record?
When the digital record of our physical actions becomes flawless, the margin to hide human error completely disappears. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into why complex systems fail and how cutting-edge technology is attempting to rewrite the rules of workplace safety. Keep questioning how the systems around you actually work, and remember, the difference between the imagined rules and the actual reality is everything.